Hitting record. Okay, so Laura Boyd, hi.
Hi,
All right, welcome to Law Goals, interviews of people with law degrees who you want to grow up to be. And I'm really excited to speak with Laura Boyd today. She is an awesome photographer and my business bestie, and I'm just in love.
Toya. It's mutual.
And I think we met. I was trying to think about like where exactly we met, and I think it was the Conquer retreat in 2015, right? I think we we bonded over the fact that we had law degrees, and then I found out you were like this cool photographer. And after the retreat, we found out we lived close to one another in the New York metro area. So why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit and tell the people what you do?
Yeah, so former attorney, obviously, but I run a photo studio in New York City doing boudoir, portraits, and branding photography to basically help women reveal their most confident selves.
Yes. Isn't that, I just thought, when I heard that, I was like instantly thinking I have to be friends with her because she's and became a photographer and left the law and like has a studio in New York. So I think this interview will be really, really helpful for people trying to leave any profession or think about changing and figure out like how they can navigate their way through that. So let's just go back then. So like, where did you go to law school, and like why did you go? Like what's the backstory there with law school?
So I went to law school at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Mm-hmm. And why did I go to law school? I really think, and I feel like this is true for so many lawyers, that I was just a smart liberal arts kid who didn't know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So law school just is kind of an enticing option. I mean, it wasn't just completely random. I had been interested in it growing up. You know, I remember doing mock trial in my talented and gifted class, like in middle school, and loving that kind of stuff. But, you know, it just felt kind of like a default for me. I had been a philosophy major and toyed with the idea of going to graduate school and getting like a PhD in philosophy and going into academia. But you know, law school seemed more practical.
Okay. Like a practical, lucrative option. Yeah. And then, so when you were in law school, did you ever feel like, I don't know if this is for me, or were you like, no? Because it kind of hits on that, like, achieve and do well, like if you're a, you know, like an A-type person. Yeah.
Like I think I actually liked law school. It didn't really hit me until I was practicing that I didn't necessarily want to do it. Because, you know, I was the nerdy kid. I loved school. Sometimes I wonder if I'd gone a more academic route in the law, like if I were doing like appellate, because I practiced criminal law when I was practicing. And I wonder, like, if I had gone the route of, you know, appellate work and writing briefs and being a little more academic as opposed to, like, in the trenches, if I would have liked it more. But let's be real, I didn't have the grades to go that route.
Okay.
But, like, I wonder if that would have been different. But so I liked law school. I liked, you know, class and studying for tests and all that stuff. That was kind of my jam. It was really sucked.
So like, okay, so you graduated from law school. Did you take the North Carolina bar then, or which bar you did?
I took the North Carolina bar. That's where I did my actual practice.
Okay, and then did you immediately, because you mentioned criminal law, did you immediately go into criminal law? Like, what did you do?
I did. I went into law school. Actually, I had been in college working at Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
I went in all like, oh, I'm going to be a corporate lawyer and I'll be like the lawyer for Barnes & Noble. And, you know, I had all these things and all these ideas. And the only thing that I knew was I wanted to do anything for criminal law. But then when I got into the classes, it was literally the only thing that I felt like fired up about.
Right.
This is not what I thought I was going to want to do, but it's really what kind of lit my spark. So yeah, criminal law is what I did. My first job, I was a little more general. You know, I was doing real estate closings, and the law firm I was at did family law too, so I helped with some of that, but mostly criminal.
Mostly. And you were on the defense side then?
Yes.
Doing criminal defense. Okay. And then how long did you do that?
I practiced for about 2 years in North Carolina. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. All criminal law.
All criminal law.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for that firm for maybe close to a year, and then I realized that I could do it on my own. And so I actually started my own practice.
You did? Wow! I did not know that. Look at you.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial spark runs deep in me. Like, I was doing a lot of court-appointed work. And so the county that I was practicing in, I was in Wake County in North Carolina. They, at the time, did not have a public defender's office.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think. Everything was farmed out to lists of publicly appointed attorneys. And so I was really doing any criminal work. All the criminal work at that very tiny firm was mine.
Right.
And to bring in cases as well, I was getting on those lists. I was on the juvenile court list and the basic criminal court list, which at my level was just like misdemeanors.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did the domestic violence court, and wasn't happy with my salary and wasn't happy with the bonus that I got, the first Christmas, and just kind of looked at the fees that came in on the court appointed list and said, I can do this and make more than what they're paying me. So I just did it myself.
Wow. Okay. So even before we get into the photography stuff, like, what do you think? I think a lot of lawyers, especially coming out of school, like you're a year out, would be like, oh my God, I can't do that. Do you think, like, why do you think you weren't afraid to do that or to take that leap?
Oh, I was afraid.
Okay.
I was terrified. In fact, I remember, so I knew a couple of attorneys that I kind of asked questions of.
Mm-hmm.
I networked with while I was still at that small firm, and one was like a friend of a fellow law or the ex-husband of a fellow law graduate who did traffic and criminal law in Chapel Hill. And I remember one particularly terrifying day when I didn't know what I was doing in court. Mm-hmm. Like I can't remember what the issue was, but I freaked out and like called this attorney, one of the attorneys that I could ask questions of, and he was in the courthouse, and he came and like walked me through what to say.
Oh, nice.
It was a bond. Like, I had a client that was in custody, and it was a bond hearing, and I'd never done it. And I was like, what do I say?
Right.
And, so I was terrified a lot of the time. But on the other hand, like, it's like, it just felt like the natural choice for me to make. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like, you can figure anything out.
Right.
I wasn't trying murder cases. These are like traffic cases, misdemeanor larceny cases. So it wasn't rocket science.
Yeah. So you felt like you had like the support and the network, I guess, to kind of do it. And it really wasn't, as long as you had that, then you could figure out the work pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay. So you like started this practice and ran it for a year by yourself? Is that
about a year? Yeah, about a year.
And then what happened after that? Because you're not a lawyer anymore.
My spouse at the time was graduating law school, and we moved to New York. So it was kind of a natural stopping place for my practice in North Carolina because we were moving.
Okay.
And that was when, I kind of said, I don't want to practice. Okay. I did take the bar in New York, just kind of as insurance. Mm-hmm. But I moved to New York kind of knowing that I didn't want to practice anymore.
Okay. And so when you first got here, were you practicing or did you try other stuff?
No, it was a really long period of trial and error figuring out what I wanted to do. And when we first got here, I just kind of panicked and went to a temp agency.
Okay.
Not even, because I had taken the bar, but did I not even have my results yet? I think I didn't have my results yet.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember, but for whatever reason, I didn't go the legal temp route initially, like doc review. I actually did legal temp work as a legal assistant just to make money, and ended up getting offered a job like right away, of course, because they're like, I worked in the legal department at Time Inc. for about a year until I got really bored, for one, because I was a secretary.
Okay.
And just like complete honesty, I was getting really embarrassed telling people, yeah, I'm a secretary and I had a law degree. Like, I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're in New York City working as a legal assistant and you're a JD. Like, what are you doing? But I didn't want to practice law. So it was like this, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah.
You had to pay the bill, so.
Bills.
Right.
And so it was then I took the jump into real estate. Tried to be a real estate agent. Didn't love that.
Okay, so you sat for is there an exam in New York and you did all that kind of stuff?
I did that. Well, my ex-husband, he had graduated and was coming here for a firm job. And so I just studied for the bar at the same time as him and we both took it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was barred here, but so,
oh no, I meant for when you started the real estate.
Oh, real estate. Yeah. You just have to take a little test.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a really simple process. And I did, mostly just like rental listings. It was a pain in the ass.
Okay.
And I actually hurt my knee during that time. So it was a little bit of a hiccup. You can't really run around the city showing people apartments when you can't bend your leg. So
oh no, what happened?
The real estate firm I was with was run by a couple of ex-finance bros.
Okay.
I hated them.
Okay.
They were fairly toxic people.
Mm-hmm.
And in their defense though, they did some nice things. Like when I first started the job, I happened to start like right before it was like President's Day was their anniversary. Okay. And they used that day as like a firm event day. It was like, I call it like a rah corporate day.
Okay.
So especially as a brand new employee, I felt like this is not optional, right? And what they announced the day was curling.
Curling?
Yes, curling. Okay. Like on the ice with brooms.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't.
Not a curling rink in New York City.
I was going to say.
We trained to, I think it was Ardsley. It was like, I don't know, an hour. And we get there and the Ardsley curling team, which is like 7 70-year-old white men. Okay. Like split us up into teams and started teaching us how to curl. And I was in the half of my, there's the team that pushes the stone and the team that brushes. And I was in the stone pushing side. And they showed us how to do it. I did it once and like really smacked my knee and thought, like, this is going to be rough. And so my second push, I did something different with my foot or something to try to avoid smashing my knee. And instead my foot like caught on the ice and I dislocated my knee.
Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Oh no.
Everything like.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
so, that was a really great start to my real estate career.
Yes.
I had to, I was like basically working in their office until I healed up and just, there were so many factors that I didn't love. The injury, I didn't like the people, I didn't like hustling around the city in the heat, showing apartments, none of it was for me.
Yeah, I'm sure if that's how you're starting a job, it's just the beginning, you're like,
it was doomed.
It's a lot to recover from that.
It was really doomed. So it was then when I was like all miserable and I thought, well, look, you've got a freaking law degree.
Mm-hmm.
I had since learned about doc review jobs.
Okay.
So I sucked it up and got a doc review job.
Mm-hmm.
And had made the decision in the meantime also that I really wanted to fulfill like a bucket list dream of living in Paris and learning French, like more in depth,
right.
style. So I legal temped doc reviewed for maybe like a year and a half to save money to go to Paris. I spent a year of that time like on the Vioxx litigation. Mm-hmm. And went to Paris for 2 months.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to circle back to the doc review because I think like doc review gets such a bad rap in our field, and really the legal field, I don't know about other fields, but it's the only place where you could just basically get a well-paying job that'll give you time to figure out what's next. And it's looked down upon as if you should be ashamed on it. And it's like, dude, you can make a lot of money in a short period of time while you're figuring out what's in a lot of industries don't have that opportunity.
It's true. I mean, I think it is really looked down upon. It's got a lot of stigma. I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's definitely a way to use your law degree and make some money. On the other hand, I mean, it depends on what kind of track you're on. You know, if you're going to work for yourself, you're going to work in small law firms or something, it's feasible. But especially as I learned in the job that I moved to after that, which was legal recruiting, it's a resume killer. You know, if you want to work in like a big firm,
you can't put that on there. You need to like take that off.
I really doubt it.
Yeah.
Those big firms are pretty brutal and really elitist in how they hire. So it's just two different tracks. There's nothing wrong with doc review jobs. It's just two different tracks.
Right. So, okay. So you moved to Paris, and were you in Paris? Did you like work, or you just like lived in Paris and
No, I just lived in Paris and was basically full-time taking French classes. I went to this little school called ELF, which stands for something French, which I don't want to butcher right now, but and went to school Monday through Friday for 2 months. Aww. In a little apartment by the Louvre. It was a dream. It was a dream come true. Yeah.
It sounds magical.
Yeah.
And so then you came back, and that's when you started legal recruiting?
I had already decided before I left that I was going to try that because it felt like, I mean, it can be extremely lucrative. And, you know, it's a commission job, and you get like a nice chunk of the amount of the yearly salary of the person you place. And legal salaries, especially in New York, are pretty fat. So really big commissions. So it seemed like a nice way to make money and just kind of stay in the legal arena, but not be practicing law. So when I got back from Paris, I started interviewing for that and got a job at a really lovely agency that, I mean, I adored the people there, loved the environment, just discovered pretty quickly that being a headhunter, at least from an agency, maybe working in recruiting like within a law firm would have been a different ballgame, but working in an agency that cold called attorneys was just a nightmare for me. It didn't fit my personality at all.
Okay.
So that didn't go very well. It gave me so much angst that I went to a hypnotist to try to cope with the cold calling anxiety.
Really?
Yes.
So what gave you the most angst about the calls?
I think just cold call. I mean, I'm an introvert, and so just like cold calling people and feeling like, okay, first of all, they're probably going to be kind of mean to me because you're calling attorneys at big firms in New York who are freaking busy and don't want to talk to recruiters. They get so many cold calls like all the time. Most of them, it was pretty abrupt. No, I'm not interested, you know, so it's not very nice. And then the kind of fear of like, oh, well, if one of them does talk to me, what the heck, you know, like I didn't feel like I was the best conversationalist to just like get these people, you know, it just didn't suit my personality at all. I was not the type of person that was suave enough when someone actually talked to me to just kind of like have a great conversation about them and get them to come in and talk to me.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I felt super lame doing it.
That makes sense.
There were people there that were so great at it, and it just wasn't a fit for me. And
so, just so people know a little bit about legal recruiting, so are you just like a firm comes in and says we need someone in XYZ department, and then are you just looking at lists of attorneys at other places that has that and maybe in their resume, and you're just calling them? Is that basically what goes on?
Yeah, pretty much. I was with an agency, and so the law firms were our clients. I mean, the law firms that had open jobs were our clients, and we would do the research. There's a listing service where you can, you know, research the attorneys and go to the firm's websites where they work and get their, you know, kind of resume, their basic credentials, and target those people and just call them up.
Right. And so the big firms, it sounds like they're just like shuffling attorneys between the big firms. So it's like, that's pretty much what it is. And so
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of turnover in those first few years, especially.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole time there's turnover, not just in the first few years, but people jump firms a lot. So they'll work their first couple of years and then they'll be ready to move to a different firm, maybe for often for a potential lifestyle improvement.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough to find a super great lifestyle in a New York City firm. But
gotcha.
Some are really brutal, so you might move from a really brutal place to a slightly less brutal place.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's and is that what you found the majority of the attorneys were trying to find a lifestyle improvement? Because when you're making that level of salary, I mean, you get $10,000, but
yeah, I mean, the salaries, the thing about New York City law firms, I mean, not all of them are exactly the same, but it's fairly lockstep. So,
right.
You know, a third year associate in the big firms are all going to make pretty much the same thing. In slightly smaller firms, it might go down a little bit. But yeah, it's all pretty similar.
Gotcha.
So the moves weren't usually really about money. It was more about some other intangible thing, you know, lifestyle or slight change of focus or something, you know, like maybe they could get a job in a specific department that they really wanted to move into that practice area.
And then last question about this particular thing, because I was curious because, you know, the majority of lawyers don't work at these large law firms, right? We're saying the top 10, 15% of the law school, that leaves the other 90% of all the law schools. And so was there ever a time when you were staffing where it was like you were reaching out or helping the other 90% maybe, or was a firm willing to work with someone who had like experience, but maybe, because I feel like I'm biased for sure, but I feel like it's a very arbitrary thing because like to get into these top law firms, it's really based on like a grade on a test or two in law school. But once you've gotten out and you started practicing, you have more experience, you actually might know more and be willing to handle the actual work. But it seems like they're just shuffling around that same pool.
They're just shuffling around the same pool. Yeah. It's very elitist. You know, like it was really humbling to be there and think, you know, I'd gone to a good law school. It was top tier. It was like, I don't know what it is today, but it was like 20, you know, the number 25 law school when I graduated. It means nothing here. Virtually nothing. You have to be like the top 10 of the top schools, of the top tier schools, of the top quarter of the top tier schools. It's really ridiculous. That's not to say there weren't people. There are plenty of people from UNC working here, but you have to be like, you know, law review, order of the coif sort of level. If you're in the top 10 elite law schools, anything below that, you've got to be like top creme de la creme.
Gotcha.
To these like uber big firms here in the city. And I think that's, people who go into law school go in thinking, oh yeah, like I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to make so much money because I'm going to go out and I'm going to work for, you know, Paul Weiss or whatever huge firm. And you just think it's going to be easy. And people will tell you, maybe it's not that as easy as you think, but I think the personality type people who go to law school is, oh, well, yeah, but it'll be easy for me. I'll get that job.
Well, yeah, I think because most people who go to law school, they've been the top of whatever they're doing for most of their experience, right? So you're putting the top of the high school class, the top of their college class, all in these schools.
Yeah.
No one thinks like they've never had that experience of like not being the top.
Yeah, exactly.
And then feeling like that means something, right? Because then when you're not the top, like it changes into like them thinking it means something about them as a person, as opposed to just you don't have experience actually. Right. Okay, so you're recruiting, you're like, yeah, this is not for me. And so then what happens next?
Well, so I was recruiting and not loving it. And also though, I was doing that in 2008. So big recession time.
Right.
And the law firms were laying people off. Like every day the news stories were brutal. It was like 3 dozen more lawyers just got laid off from X firm and, 100 from this firm. Some law firms even closed. It was really the first time that one of these recessions really hit the law firms the way this one did.
Uh-huh.
I think whole classes of incoming fall classes for some law firms got completely deferred a year. I mean, it was really a nightmare in the world. And so in a commission-only job where there were very few jobs coming open because of the climate, the only job, I mean, there were jobs for bankruptcy attorneys. They're always recession-proof. And there were intellectual property was pretty strong, but most fields were really gutted. It was really extra competitive for even having good listings. So I didn't even make any money on top of hating it. So something really had to give. So it was then that the photography business kind of came into existence.
And had you always had an interest in photography, or like?
Yeah, like I loved it just like as an amateur, you know, traveling, taking travel photos. I grew up with a dad who was really a great amateur photographer. So he was always taking photos and had, you know, lots of equipment. And I guess I kind of got it from him. But, I think it was actually somebody at my recruiting job when I was trying to figure out what to do. And they said, you know, you're so great at photography. This is New York. Why don't you like take actor headshots or something? So that's what sparked it.
Okay.
And so I set up a little home studio, took some classes at International Center for Photography here in the city, and put out an ad for actor headshots, and it worked.
Where did you put the place the ad?
What's the name of the place? Backstage. It's
okay.
It's an actor resource here, like a newspaper. And another place, which I completely don't know the name of, I actually did a physical bulletin board, little like collage of my headshots with my contact information.
Oh, nice.
For that, I got some jobs, some business from that. And then started to just also get some referrals, some word of mouth referrals, like started shooting little family sessions in Central Park and stuff like that. And actually one of the biggest jobs I got in that first year was for my legal recruiting agency. They hired me to create a whole new website for them and take branding photos and headshots of everybody in the firm.
Wow. That's so wonderful. So just from idea, like someone saying to you, you know what, you should take some photos and take classes, and then like starting the business, like how long did that take you?
A month.
So that's really, you do have an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, I do. I tend to get stuff done. And I really was unhappy. You know, I had a foot out of the door. I'd actually at that point already stopped recruiting. I remember just going into my boss's office in tears, and she gave me a kind of a different role in the company. She was doing partner level recruiting. So I was doing like hourly work for her, doing research and stuff to help support her partner recruiting practice. But things were tough. She finally was like, you know, I think actually I started the business, and then it wasn't long after I started the business that she said, we can't keep this going. Like, you know, you gotta. And so I was full-time.
Then you were full-time. So, okay. So being full-time, were you like immediately like panicked, or what did you think? Like, oh no, I mean, I
was really excited. I will say I had the luxury of having a husband who was a law firm associate in New York. So, you know, we could pay the rent. I didn't have to worry about that sort of stuff. I don't know, honestly, how things would have gone differently had I not had that support system. So I recognize that was like really lucky and privileged to be able to start my business with that as a foundation. But yeah, I immediately got it started and started posting ads, and yeah.
Okay. And then, so you're doing the headshots and like family portraits and all that kind of stuff.
Started doing weddings that first year too, by the end of the year.
Wow. Okay. You started doing weddings, and what then made you make the transition to boudoir? Like what sparked that?
So when I first started the business, I didn't even know boudoir photography was a thing.
Okay.
But in that first year, you know, doing all the learning and discovering other photographers, I discovered that it was a niche and was instantly drawn to it. And of course thought, gosh, I don't know how to do that. But then in my kind of serendipitously, so I started the business in 2009.
Okay.
In 2010, I decided to go back to Paris for a 5-week photo project. And during that period, these amazing boudoir photographers, the Boudoir Divas, had a workshop in Paris.
Oh, okay.
So it all just kind of lined up, and I took their workshop while I was there. And I had started doing a little bit of boudoir shooting before that.
Okay.
A couple months before in anticipation, but that's really when I like learned how to do the lighting and the posing and stuff for boudoir specifically. And after that, like I really had the spark to focus my business more that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess actually I kind of did everything for a couple of years. And then at a certain point, maybe around 2012,
okay,
I started to say that really boudoir is what I wanted to focus on. So I started really kind of steering the ship that way.
Mm-hmm.
And now I would say it's 95% of what I shoot. I also do branding,
mm-hmm.
But the focus is still very much boudoir.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of like getting clients into the business, like have you, because you said you started in 2009, so you're coming up on your 10-year anniversary, which is amazing, you know? So, you know, what do you think has worked in terms of consistently getting clients and being able to pay the bills?
Right. Mm-hmm. Definitely some strategic ad spends. I do pay for Yelp because Yelp is kind of a necessary evil for small business owners. Anybody who has a small business understands that Yelp is a necessary evil.
Right.
Evil because you get the crazies on there like giving you these bizarre 1-star reviews because they're just insane, disgruntled people.
Mm-hmm.
And that ruins your week. But, so, you know, I pay for advertising there because as much as a lot of us hate Yelp, everybody finds it. You know, if they Google you, they're going to see your Yelp reviews. So you need to develop a strong presence there.
Mm-hmm.
And so Yelp I pay for. A lot of my clientele are brides because they're more as a wedding gift. So I pay to advertise on The Knot. Actually started paying to advertise on The Knot way back in the day when I was doing weddings. And then as I transitioned out of weddings, I stayed there because, you know, the bridal market is really big for me. So those are really the only two places that I pay. Mm-hmm. I also have done a lot of work with deal sites like Living Social and Gilt City, which was really, really instrumental in me building volume in my business.
Okay.
There's a lot of pros and cons to it, which would be like a whole nother podcast, but it worked for me ultimately to build like a reputation and get volume. And then the longer I'm in business, it's just a lot of referrals and natural Google searches. Like a lot of people just report that they find me Googling boudoir. I guess I have like pretty strong SEO.
Okay.
For my site, so. Mm-hmm.
And so have you, because you mentioned when you started, you were in a home studio. So are you still there or like, where are you shooting?
I have a studio now, like a separate studio on 29th Street that I moved into in 2011. So about 2 years I shot at home and then expanded into a dedicated space.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been in the same space since then. So 7.5 years I've been in this space.
Oh, wow. And do you have like any assistants or anyone else working in your business with you?
No, my wife helps me Photoshop and I have freelance makeup artists that come in case by case for the clients, but otherwise it's just me.
Wow. And I mean, that's really inspirational for people who think like, oh, I need to have this huge staff to like have a small business keep going for 10 years.
Yeah.
You just need to talk to the people, right?
In the last year, I will say I have added some external help. I have now an online business manager who helps me with social media strategy and, keeping my blog up to date and things like that, helping me think about marketing ideas and just all that kind of stuff. It helps me implement that. And I do pay for, and this was the first thing I ever paid for, is a virtual receptionist. And that was like the best thing I ever did because as we established when I was a headhunter, I don't love the phone.
Right.
So it's just me here. So if I'm shooting, I could never get to the phone. And I was really bad about listening to voicemails and calling them back, even though that was like money sitting there in a message.
Right.
So now I have a virtual receptionist that helps me get, capture all of those potential clients.
Oh, that's great. So like you were able to sort of navigate around that, the cold calling and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you think, looking back now, because there's been a lot of transitions in your career.
Yeah.
And it's like really awesome because like you it seems like you're not afraid to just try things. And I think a lot of lawyers are afraid to just like try and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did things that, like I wasn't really excited to be a secretary, but I did it. I was a little embarrassed by it, but there's no shame in any of this. We're just trying to figure out what we want to do. We're trying to make a living. This is, especially in New York, it's a really expensive place to be. You've got to do what you got to do sometimes. It takes a long time to land where you're going to stay. You know what I mean? Right. We all think that we're going to know exactly what we want to do, like in college, but it changes and it changes again and it changes again.
Right.
And it's changing again for me a little bit.
It is. So what is the change coming up?
Well, I'm about to move to Knoxville. I'm still going to keep my New York photo studio, but I am moving to Knoxville just to get a little break from the city. So I'll be opening a photo studio there, but focusing more on like fine art portraiture instead of just boudoir. But also the bigger change is that I want to start doing business and self-empowerment coaching.
Okay.
I want to kind of create another stream of revenue where it's not just always taking photos.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I guess through all these transitions, what would you say, or what advice would you give somebody who's maybe like considering a transition? Or I know like I thought about leaving my job before I did it for like a good 5 years. And now that I've been working on my own, I'm like, man, I should have done it a long time ago. I should have just tried some things.
Yeah.
What do you think, what advice would you give that person? Or I don't know, what made you say like, you know what, I'm going to try this?
Well, I mean, I think you really do. I know it's like almost cliche, but you really do have to like follow your passion.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was actually just before I started the legal recruiting job. I read this book called The Monk and the Riddle.
Okay.
And he asked, have you ever read it?
No.
In that book, it was like the first ever kind of businessy, self-helpy sort of book that I ever read. Mm-hmm. My ex-husband was reading it and he was like, you need to read this, because I was in such a like flux about what do I want to be when I grow up. Mm-hmm. And it really just kind of asks the question, what would you be willing to do for the rest of your life? Mm-hmm. When you think about going to work, like, is that something that you really want to do for the rest of your life?
Right.
You need to be able to say yes. Whatever it is you're doing, you want to be able to say yes.
Right.
So you really do have to think of that. And then I also think you just have to take a leap. Mm-hmm. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to screw up and go a different way, but you just have to like release yourself from that fear that's tying you to whatever job you're in that you're miserable in.
Right.
Go for it.
I think a lot of people, their fear is like money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you, I mean, I know when you started this journey, you had support, but you're fully supporting yourself and your family now yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like on the personal side of it, I was married to a guy with a law firm job when I first started the business, but after a couple of years, and this is why I got a studio and left my living room, we actually got a divorce. Mm-hmm. And so I had to make it work to support myself. I mean, the year that I left, I think the business only was making like $75,000.
Okay.
That year, which is, not enough as a gross business revenue and to live in New York City. So I had to grow it really, really fast. So, I mean, you'll make it work if you have to.
Right.
And in retrospect, just going back to like taking the leap. So imagining that I hadn't had that spouse with a steady job that could pay the rent, I would have just started it on the side. You know, you can start a side hustle and build it until it is feasible to like help you pay the bills. You don't have to, I'm not saying that you should just leave your secure job and put out an ad for headshots and see what happens, but you can build it more slowly and still be working towards it.
Right, right. And I would agree with that. And then recognizing that there is something to be said for like a little bit of discomfort in trying something new. Like I didn't realize I wasn't broke, like truly broke until I was like in my 30s. And I came to realization like, oh no, like if I want a job or something, I can figure it out. Like I have options. And if you know you have options, then it's okay to be a little uncomfortable with knowing like I'm going to try this and see if it works or not. But if it doesn't, it's not like I'm going to fall flat on my face. I can take a chance on myself. And if it doesn't work out, I'll just go and get a job somewhere. And I know lawyers like, oh, it's going to be so hard. But really, you can get a job somewhere. Unlike, there's a lot of people who have less education who might have to be worried, but somebody will hire you.
Yeah. Let's face it, you're a lawyer, you're barred, you can get a Doc review job. If you have money to pay the rent, you can get a Doc review job. Exactly. I mean, the way I see it, if you've left, there is a certain extent to which I think you jump off of a track. So like if you're in a certain law firm environment and you just totally blow that up and leave, depending on what you've left to do, you're probably not going to get back into that track, right? You kind of screwed your resume up. But who cares? Like if your ultimate goal is to go do something for yourself,
right?
Once you break free of those like golden handcuffs, right? You can do whatever you need to do. You can hustle. Like let go of the stigma of, oh, I don't have the perfect job on my resume anymore. Who cares?
Right.
Nobody cares. You're your own person.
Right.
If you need to doc review, if you need to wait tables while you build your dream job, who cares? Nobody cares.
Right. The only person that might care are the other lawyers at that firm, and a lot of them are miserable anyway.
They're miserable. Yeah. Joke's on them. No. Yeah.
I don't know if that's the group you want to listen to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. And so where can people find you? What's your, social media, websites, all that kind of stuff?
So my main gig is Own Your Sexy. So it's ownyoursexy.com, and I'm on Instagram. It's actually own.your.sexy, because some bozo has Own Your Sexy and they don't even use it.
They're always the bozo.
I message them, but they're like not even there. So anyway, own.your.sexy on Instagram. And I also do branding. So when you do create that business of your dreams, I can take all of your branding shots for you. And that's Own Your Brand. So ownyourbrand.co. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Own Your Sexy and ownyourbrand.com. I love it.
Yep.
Very creative. It was so nice speaking with you, Laura.
Wonderful to chat with you as always, Toria.
Yes. It's a little weird. Like we talk all the time. So
I know.
I'm trying to be formal, but like I know all the same.
You still learn things about me you didn't know.
Yes, I didn't know. So like I learned some new stuff. I need to interview more people so I can learn.
Interview your friends.
Exactly. And thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
To be interviewed, and I will talk to you later.
All right.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.